Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. Rolando Di Marco. And it's a pleasure to introduce three leaders of the industry. Juan Carlos Morales, José Luís Zorzín, and Esteban Bilbao. Juan Carlos is an agricultural engineer, Aapresid member of APSE, teacher of the University of Tucumán, focus and offer solution for the north of Argentina, for the crops of the north of Argentina. José Luís is an agricultural engineer from the faculty of the University of Rosario. He's specialist in grains. He's a manager and advisor of Más Hectáreas. He's an Aapresid partner, and he's also deputy chair of the program REM. And Esteban Bilbao, he's regional partner of Aapresid, a facilitator of CREA, digital group of selective aplicaciones selectivas. All these industry leaders are really focused, and they advise and provide their expert opinion, and they conduct different trials with their feet on the ground. So we hope this is going to be a fruitful debate in this last hour of this day. I'm going to give the starting point by showing the title, New Weeds, New Faces, Old Challenges. So the idea is to exchange experiences, and it's good if you can use WhatsApp messages to send your queries. And this is a novelty, what it shows here, and what you must have seen. And you must have logged into the Aapresid website in the REM section, where you can see this weed survey. And this novelty is that we are presented this 2025 survey, where we see the resistance of the different problematic weeds from Argentina. And as you can see, this is conducted every 2 years, and we see a plateau in the most important ones. In the case of Ceniza as amaranthus, they have covered most of the region, of the agricultural region of Argentina. Later we will see in hectares, but we have prevalence in most of the agricultural areas. Lucine has become has gotten into a plateau. All the different grasses, and we have Ceniza with multiple resistance to glyphosate and LS. And if you see this in terms of affected area, we see 25 million hectares, almost all arable land of Argentina is covered in Ceniza and amaranthus, this grass complex. And we see sorghum-resistant turnips taking about 5 million hectares. So we could say that of the 6 million hectares of 5 million farming hectares is mostly affected by turnips, and it's covered also in resistant conizas. Now we are going to see from north to south with Chachin. And let me show you this paper from Perth University by Bussi et al., where it shows the wheat resistant to the different action modes. And the trigger we are going to use is the same herbicide. and we are going to generate resistance by using the same herbicide. And the different curves show the different action modes. After a constant use, after 10 years of constant use of ALS, we see how resistant triggered the resistance to the different type of species. Glyphosate, as of 10, 15 years, resistance evolved. Graminicide, glyphosate, as of 1974, that was massively used, we see how it has evolved. And lastly are the ones that are resisting, but nothing is error-free. So I want you to pay attention to this, but synthetic hormonal groups are resisting a bit more. And after 30, 40 years of use, they start showing a curve, an ascending curve in terms of species resistance. I've taken up too much of my time, so I leave you with Carlos Chachin. The floor is yours.
Camina, movete, anda por allá. Hola, bueno. Buenas tardes. Y sí, yo arranco desde el norte.
I was asked to come from 40 degrees centigrade, and we will see what happens here. So very briefly, I will try to make a walkthrough of the past 20 years to see what happened with weeds. I have been an Aapresid member since the year 2000. We created a regional office in 2003, and we learned about the sanitary aspect, which is the main problem of NOA crops, crops in the northwest. And actually, the history of weeds is tightly related with my work at Aapresid at that time. I think that we have to identify that our area belongs to the Great South American Chaco. So thanks to Aapresid, I had to get to know Philadelphia and that area, which is knowing greater development in the area of Santa Cruz de la Sierra, which is the other part of El Gran Chaco, the Great Chaco area. So much of what happens in our area, in the north area of Argentina, is precisely what is going on in this big area. The north of Argentina, the area of Chaco, corresponds to what we call the NOA, the northwest, the northeast. NOA, NEA, and the north of Córdoba. These are relatively similar for some aspects, but there are some differences that we will see later. In spite of the fact that I move in that area, information will focus more on the northwest, which has a very specific pattern. Right now, it's the hot season that is getting started. Right now, sunflower is being planted in the north, but there is no rainfall in the northwest, and we launched our campaign in December. So that determines a sanitary condition involving pests and weeds and diseases that is very particular. So this is, I am from the province of Tucumán, and I will try to show the past, to take a look at the past, to understand the present and get ready for the future. The colors that are used, which is yellow, red, and green, this is like a traffic light. This has to do with my perspective. In the past, we were not doing so well, but we were not doing so badly. In the present, we are in a critical situation, and our hope is to be able to make progress towards a future where we may have better management of weeds. I was saying that in 2004, when we started out with our regional agency, for us it was a key moment because I was able to get my colleague Juan Carlos Papa to come to Tucumán for the first time ever to talk about weeds. So he gave us lots of information because he didn't know what he could show from Oliveros to Tucumán, and his perspective was really useful for us. Up until then, he had seen a change in relative abundance because we understand this with the passage of time. This is for weeds. So no-till and glyphosate were leading to the main spectrum of weeds having to do with species that were not very well known, because he was talking about, at that point in time, he was talking about novel species. If back then we had taken a look at this list in greater detail, maybe we wouldn't have the problem that we currently have, because this was an unknown for us. Because many of the weeds with which we have a problem right now have to do with the evolution. We will see perennial weeds later. So up until that point in 2004 in Argentina, there had not been any cases of glyphosate resistance reported. At least there was a suspicion that there was a problem in Salta that had been detected in connection with sorghum halapense, but up until then everything seemed to be okay. So I was coming back from the Worldwide Soybean Congress, which had been held in Foz do Iguaçu that year, and the main problem for people was soybean rust, and people were concentrating on that, and weeds were not such an important priority. The next year, in the north, we got started with a race trying to prevent resistant weeds from showing up. This was the official case with sorghum halapense in 2005. Our conditions in the northwest are quite extreme. In summer, high temperature, high humidity, and this leads to biomass that is quite complex, and the cycles for the weed are very long. So we were not able to weed this sorghum halapense. And well, the next picture that you can see on the right, Echinocloa, was a surprise for us, but we were able to handle it better. So we know the story of this, but just to show you this picture, I'm showing this because there we started with Echinocloa management trials. Imazethapyr was the best treatment to burn the weed down in pre-emergence. And I remember that our leader at this time, Ignacio from Obispo Colombres, has showed that Imazethapyr did not control illucine. But that was not a problem because the amounts were small, the volumes were small. But not much time elapsed until we started to see a greater presence of eleucine. And well, Marcelo Salgado called us. He had never seen this size of eleucine. You can see that the weeds are up to our waists, and we could already see that graminicides did not control eleucine so well either. So, well, not much time elapsed until Ignacio confirmed that there was resistance to other agents as well. And then, well, this was followed by Eurocloa, Digitaria insularis. And this was a very striking case indeed, because in previous years, whenever we exchanged information with Brazil and Paraguay, they already had it from a long time before as resistant weeds. This Digitaria insularis had already manifested itself as resistant. In our case, it was not resistant for a long time, but finally a resistant biotype came up. So these are the cases of resistance. What concerns us nowadays is the evolution of other grasses. where we have hard grasses. So take a look at this picture from 2005. I searched this pictures later and to be able to understand what was really going on. But when I monitored grasses, all I did was to take the picture. I didn't know what was going on, but I just kept the picture. 20 years later, we can see that at least there were two distinct types of trichloris. Actually, they had been treated with glyphosate, and the control that was attained was different depending on the biotypes. Now, we have been able to show or confirm that some hard grasses are perennial, others are not, and so on. And then people started talking about some grasses that have been isolated. For example, Papophorum, and we're really struck by what started to happen right now, because the truth is we do not have very good control, such as the case of Cenchrus. So this is similar to other cases such as Digitalis, Insularis. So it's with Setaria, it's the same thing. There are different types of Eleucine. What about broadleaf weeds? Well, a similar thing happened. Just to show you the cases having to do with resistance, back in 1992, we saw the first report of a herbicide-resistant weed in Argentina. It passed kind of unnoticed, but it was an outburst that was determined by some engineers in Tucumán. We noticed that there were, these experts noticed that there was Amaranthus guitensis that was ALS resistant. So this was one of the most frequently used herbicides back then. So resistant biotypes came up in Tucumán, but nobody paid much attention to that because glyphosate was launched into the market more or less around that time. But the current situation is that nowadays we have biotypes of Amaranthus hybridus or guitensis that are resistant to glyphosate and to ALS. So this is a minor thing because summer weeds are the ones that are important. A minor phenomenon has to do with winter crops. But, well, we also saw the case of Raphanus that is resistant to ALS. Lolium does not exist in Chaco. If you have ever been in Tucumán, we have Tafí del Valle. It is a high valley, a valley of high altitude, and it's the only place where ryegrass is used as a pasture. But in Chaco, you cannot find lolium in grain fields or in grain crops. That is why it's not on the list of resistant weeds. What really struck us quite hard was this outbreak in 2014, center of Tucumán. We do not know how this happened, but this is an area that is not the main grain crop growing area, cereal growing area. Farmers started to complain about weeds in a cornfield. Well, you cannot see the corn in this picture, right? There's so much, there are so many weeds right there. So this is how the problem started more than 10 years ago. And as the hard grasses are a matter of concern in pretty much the same way, we are also concerned about hard broadleaf weeds. So we have already spoken about Camelina. We have the white mauve. This is typical of the center of the country. We started to see the Borreria complex, spermacosi. The species are the ones that you can see right on the slide. But for us, as technicians or farmers, we are not so much interested about the names more specifically, but what interests us is that these are plants that are not dying with traditional management, classical management. So this picture is to show a this type of weed. You can see that it has these little white flowers, but there are other biotypes that look entirely different. And their resistance to herbicides is exactly the same. Gomphrena. And right here, these are weeds that are super hard, broadleaf weeds. You can see this here. When you make an application, for example, there is a Borreria that has been perhaps killed off altogether, but this one remains alive, and it's the same kind of application. And, well, there can be a little bit of yellowish apexes, but that's it. So this is a weed that goes unnoticed. For example, in the northeast and northwest of the country, farmers say, no, there's no such weed. But whenever I go to the field, I can see that it's there. It doesn't have visible flowers, and I think that leads to poor detection in the farm. And to conclude, the same thing applies to Melokia. Well, you can see what it looks like with an application. Hypanthus. I don't know what type of hypanthus we are talking about in this case, but all of the other weeds have been killed off with a high dose of glyphosate, but this one remains. It is not affected at all. So all of these broadleaf weeds are increasing in our plots, and in general they have this pattern. They are perennial and they have thickened roots. Many of them tolerate mechanical weeding, and they tolerate cultivators and so on, and no matter what kind of herbicide you apply, whether it is hormonal herbicides or glyphosate, they resist them. So we try to burn them off. That is what we try to do, and we try to plant ASAP.
There are many different species. And to leave you with a message, perhaps this is not a native weed. It was introduced. This is Thetonia grass with more than 20% of protein. That's why they call it the Cuban grass. Because every fodder species is called type of grass. We are talking about a weed that is 2 meters tall. Unfortunately, it has been advancing in Jujuy, Catamarca, in the north of Córdoba, also in the northwest of our country. And to wrap up, I would like to make reference to the following. What's changing is the relative abundance. I give you here an example. 15 years ago, I conducted a survey of collection of data, and what did I see? The number of species was very high. Many of these are increasing. 15 years ago, I surveyed different plots, and it had the same situation. They have always been present. They have increased now. At the time, this showed everything that was making these weeds possible to grow. To keep weeds at bay, you have to monitor them. So I weeded a plant. I'm separated one from the other to take a good picture. When I wanted to pluck out one of the plants, I saw that they were different. 2 different species. One is a Melokia, a hard one, and the other one is a Malvastrum. So you have to be really careful. You have to take a closer look, and you have to be very precise. So to sum up, we have a set of resistant weeds, grasses and broadleaves. We have a bigger set of grasses and broadleaves, hard and super hard. And we can see this when we do the following. And these species are the ones that are remaining. And you farm or you grow on top of this, and a couple of days later they are completely recovered and they are part of the season, the whole cycle. We have proved all the different techniques, herbicides, service crops, weed seeker, etc. This is a bit of an overview, and perhaps later you might have a question you would like to ask. Thank you. Thank you, José Luis. José Luis, the floor is yours. Perhaps you cannot see the pointer very well. I'm going to stand here. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for your invitation. They asked me to answer these questions. If there are new weeds that start expanding in the area, are there some of them that are expanding more than others? And if there are new resistant biotypes? I'm going to talk about the core area, but I'm not focusing on the core area. I'm in Corral de Bustos. I'm part of the consultancy of the department of the location of Marco Juarez, and but we know that some problems replicate in other areas, on similar areas. I use a scheme of what we have as fallow, where soybean is perhaps the longest fallow period we might have, and below you will see all the different mechanisms we can use preventively, long fallow, short fallow, and targeting to this type of weeds because we want to keep the main crop clean, the summer crop. Today, under the techniques we have in the post-emergency and the different weed management techniques, pre-emerging and in emergency. And then by getting acquainted with the different plots, we know what is there in each plot and do some control planning. Which are those weeds that we see today that start growing? Coniza, but with the ALS resistance, they are not present, Coniza, I'm sorry, but they started growing. Glyphosate resistant is everywhere. Lolium with glyphosate resistant and oxyphod resistance. We do not have resistance to oxyphod in Corral de Bustos, but if we move 50 kilometers away, close to Venado Tuerto, they are oxyphod resistant. Acanthoid is a new weed with proven resistant to glyphosate, and it started as poor management with subdoses, and in Cana with resistance to glyphosate and 2,4-D. Sonchus, it starts growing, and we see this more and more in different plots. And we have the folium that is can be mistaken with Rama Negra. We do trials, and we see that in many plots it looks like Rama Negra, hairy fleabane, but it's this one. In the case of summer, where there is more weed pressure from the north to my area, we have more summer weeds. This is the weed we have. Amaranthus palmieri starts growing more in the typical area of Hybridus ex formaquitensis, but we start seeing more palmieri sorghum with glyphosate resistance and graminicide resistant. Then we have Era Grotis that is also that has also been showcased in another panel. It's very troublesome and it's very settled. And indica with glyphosate resistant and some other weeds. We will have confirmation of other weeds later on. I'm going to try and talk about some of them as far as I can. Conaisa, you see the two bonariensis and sumatrensis. Here there's a trial. In this trial, you can say the glyphosate and the ALS. As you can see in this biotype, what we saw, there was no aggregate. There's poor rotation, and that same trial the next year in Corral de Bustos gave other results. This is glyphosate. This is the name of brands. We work for all companies. Here you can see the ALS with reference to the same glyphosate dose. And we start seeing other action mechanisms that can act in a residual manner to give us a hand in this and not to pressure so much. These are the same action mechanisms as we perform with corn. Here, the two teams get together to collect information. We have been conducting trials for 5-6 years. We tested everything. Let me show a trial of 2022 where we tested everything with glyphosate base, and what we can see it works are those with a hormonal base. In mix, regardless of the fact that it may have 2,4-D resistant, we use it, and then within wheat, we think what we can use without glyphosate. The combination with fluorospin worked very well, and what did not work very well was saflufensil, and we include this burning agent, and sometimes we make a mistake. This is a double blow. The glyphosate worked best as burner. And even if we had a problem at the beginning, we were not able to correct it later. We threw that treatment went to waste. The problem is during the spring control. The problem is with soybeans, so we started planning treatments for the spring period when we cannot use so much one of these herbicides. So here you can see some of the tools using 100 cubic centimeters of herbicide. When I add 2,4-D, that control improves, and you have dicamba mix. All of them improve to that clopidogrel base dose. Or with aloxipel, there's no restraint. Control is low. And when you see a double blow with glyphosate combined with other active agents, we have pretty positive controls. Moreover, if we use sequential treatment. Sequential treatment is the one that is carried out after 30 days in a systemic manner with a burner such as glyphosate. It's a different concept where I will act 15 days afterwards after the first 15 days. With Melina, another weed that has been growing quite a lot, and we know it's herbicide tolerant. They say take a chair and watch it grow because it's beautiful. It has beautiful flowers. But we try to investigate and to try to stop it a little bit. One interesting aspect is that we see that the seed is there, so we need to act not only with the glypho 2,4-D base, but also one that is able to deactivate the seed. And since it's sorghum, we need to start treatment in fall. This is some of the treatments for maize. We have, there's no double blow here. There are two moments of intervention in maize, because one is glyphosate 2,4-D with the participation of companies that participated of the trial, and then a second treatment with the crop. All this treatment with the second action has an acceptable control, and this is trial data. There are control conditions, etc. And in the field, controls are different because the control is different. And in soybean, the chemical treatment is different, and we add PPO. They help. HPPD also are helpful. I mentioned this one, this active agent for Johnson grass, Sulap, works very well. It takes time to prove 8-10 liters per hectare. But this has been published. But if you see, when we use a double dose, this works well. So it's a weed that have to be controlled in its seed, not only in just one strike. There's a lot of data in terms of sequential treatment. You have the pre-emergent, and then within the crop you have another additional chance. In the case of Johnson grass, we sent seeds to increase resistance, and Julio sent the results. Have a look at the different types of biotype that is resistant to glyphosate and sclethodim and aloxifop. There is more and more resistant biotype to haloxifop, eleucine. Also from July, we started collecting seeds from different parts, and I found it very interesting to see. I was very surprised by the resistance to active agents. It has nicosulfuron, glyphosate, imazapyr. The green areas is survival 0%, everything died. In yellow is resistance in development, up to 20% survived, and resistant, it means that survival was over 20%. All of them survived to glyphosate and glufosinate, and we start seeing aloxi and other types of products that are used in the case of corn. This is cross-resistant, population with cross-resistance to aldocefox and acletodin, and for nickel sulfuron and imazapyr. This is the frequency of population with multiple resistance to herbicide, glyphosate plus one other. And the other one is glufosinate. This is a new trial of 2024, and it was surprising to see that there are population with resistant to 3 different type of herbicides, ALS in both cases, plus one of the other 2. They say we are alarmists with pests and so on and so forth, but this was conducted by researchers. As REM, we communicate this. There are certain population, Corralito, Tucumán, with resistance to 5, 6, 7 active principles.
For example, we have imazapyr and the others. So here you have 5 modes of actions, MOAs. With regard to A. palmieri, this is a weed that is appearing more and more, and it is more complicated when it comes to controlling than hybridus. So you can see that palmieri was not as affected as hybridus. So in response to the question of the title and in closing, in general, driver species have not changed. They are the same as before. The thing is that they are the ones that adapt the most to the environment. The resistant biotypes were generated according or following herbicide selection pressure. The weeds that prospered were the ones that are naturally tolerant to glyphosate. Chemical selection pressure still is very high, and all that we are using has generated resistance already, because there already is in the US amaranthus that is PPO-HPPD resistant. So you know what is in stock for us. So, well, mixes to reduce selection pressure. There are mixes that are more positive than others. There needs to be like a double hit policy so as to add an MOA and more effectiveness. This especially applies to larger weeds. So this is another mechanism for the control of weeds. So my time is up. Thank you.
Vamos, Esteban. Ahí está.
Hola.
Se cortaron todos.
El mío.
¿Cuál anda?
El mío anda.
El de Chachín anda. Chachín, ¿querés dar la presentación de Esteban?
Esteban, la doy yo.
Hola, hola. Hola, hola, hola.
La da Chachín, Esteban.
Hola, hola, hola. Hola, hola. Ahí está. ¿Cuál anda? ¿Anda este? ¿Sí? Bueno, entonces dejo el otro. Bueno, si quieren terminar el día, nos vamos. ¿Listo? Rolo, ¿vos tenías algo más para decir? ¿No? Ya está. Paren que dejo esto acá y no se caiga.
Okay, so thank you for staying on today. We don't have much to continue to share, but, well, the goal here is for me to speak about the south of the country. My name is Esteban Bilbao, and I work in the southeast of the province of Buenos Aires with a center in Necochea, so we'll talk about the south. So with regards to the southeast in connection with ryegrass.
Un poquito rápido, pero una historia para entender cuál fue la situación de las malezas y cuál es.
So let's take a look back to know what to learn about how weeds did. So In the year 2000, we were doing conventional drilling or tilling, and we had a lot of problems with the weeds. We had the problems of cynodon, sorghum alepense, cyperus. Many of these species were totally out of control, and they were cultivator resistant, because this is what we did the most. So we should not just think about resistance to agrochemicals or herbicides, but because there are weeds that are resistant to any mode of action, to any type or measure of control, even plowing. So in 2012, with glyphosate already and with chemical control, apart from cultural measures that we may have introduced, we already had Coniza, which we tried to control with glyphosate. We wanted to clean it up with glyphosate, but it resisted glyphosate entirely. There was nothing that glyphosate did for it or with it. Raphanus sativas, which was ALS resistant, and the rest of the cruciferous weeds became resistant to ALS. And in the southwest, we already started to see evidence of glyphosate-resistant lolium. Why? Because of low rotation, because there is significant presence of fine grain crops. And then there were other weeds that were important in our area because they were highly present or because there were cases that were difficult to control. 2014, lolium, glyphosate resistant in the southwest, Brassica rapa, that is a turnip with a resistant gene, glyphosate resistant gene for rapeseed. It is the Monsanto RR seed rape, that has a gene that transferred over to this Brassica rapa. And amaranthus and sorghum alepense, which started to arrive in this area, and well, we started getting it little by little. 2019, lolium was already resistant to glyphosate, ACCAs, and ALS, especially in the southeast. But this clethodim did not work so well anymore. Epilobium and Camelina, as was shown by the colleagues, there were specific plots. Sorry, we lost him.
Lo paramos ahí, yo te lo cuento.
Bueno, sigo desde acá. Bueno, y Camelina también presente.
Camelina was also present. The plot where we have the biggest problem with Camelina, the farmer's mother took it to her garden and she planted it there because the flower was so nice, and now we don't know how to stop her because it's invaded the farm entirely. 2021, also in the southeast, clethodim was added to glyphosate. And we have one plot that we have used as a demo plot, and then we have the plot next to it, which we are consulting for at this point, and again, there is clethodim resistant. And, well, we also have elucin, especially in specific areas of the plots, where the borders of the plots, the edges, where glyphosate is not working so well. Well, we end up, and we also have progress by Hirschfeldia. And in general, this used to be present on the hedges or at the edges of the. But when Hirschfeldia appeared in the area, it's like all over the place, and it's very hard to stop. In 2022, we received the first lot of glyphosate-resistant echinocloa, but, well, we already have glyphosate-resistant. Senecio vulgaris has been making quite a bit of progress, unfortunately, and Cardus acanthoides as well. In reality, until until Conaisa follows were just about glyphosate and 2,4-D. But when Conaisa barged in, we started to use dicamba, 2,4-D, glyphosate, as well as residual herbicides and emergence herbicides. When other cruciferous species started to appear, we put our bets on contact herbicides, reducing hormonal herbicides, and so on. Now, what's the problem? When we do fallow and we have thistles that are quite large, we can lose to them, or we can lose them without the second hormonal treatment, if we do not apply a second hormonal treatment. So we have problems with Cardus acanthoides, which is very large, for which we should apply a second hormonal application. So this is the landscape nowadays. So you have lolium, ALS, glyphosate, clethodim, and so on. So right now we are going to try and identify. So in all likelihood, there will be this kind of weed. In some places such as Rentil and Azul, glyphosate and ALS is used a lot. Well, the same applies. You can see the different treatments that we are betting on for the different kinds of weeds, such as amaranthus, etc. So this is information of 14,000 hectares that we studied over the past 10 years. The presence on the plots, even if it is a single plant or if it's full, but this is the percentage of plots that have at least one plant of these resistant weeds. So in 2015, we identified 1% of our plots that were resistant to glyphosate, where you see ryegrass, that is lolium. So 2016, 59. There was a failure in identification. It was not that it grew from 1 to 59 in 1 year. We failed in identifying it. So right now we have 99% of plots with lolium, 88% of Nabolsa, and Palmeri, for example, is more stable right now. Sorghum is more or less the same situation, and Capin. So why is this graph good? Because it really leads us to visualize that the first 5 years during which we identified resistant weeds were critical for slowing down the progress of those resistant weeds on the plots and their distribution elsewhere. On the fields that we wanted to do everything that had to be done. Right now, the situation with weeds is more controlled than during the first 2 to 4 years. Because, well, maybe we got relaxed because the fields were rented, were rentals, and so on. But the situation of the weeds during those first few years was really critical and terrible. This is a good lesson for those that have a turnip plant or that have a little bit of lolium. Be careful, because the first 2 years are critical. And there are always 2 effective modes of action. These are the MOAs that are available for controlling lolium. In Argentina, we have 11 MOAs for controlling lolium. The ones in blue are the ones that are not commercially available in Argentina, but we have 11 MOAs. So what usually happens? I use glyphosate, so there's glyphosate resistant. I add clethodim, and usually all the plants that I want to control with glyphosate, I am controlling them with graminicides. So if I have a plant that is resistant to glyphosate, I need to treat it not just with a graminicide, something else as well. If not, in 5 years' time, I will have another problem. Same thing for Nabolsa. In Argentina, we have 9 modes of action for controlling these types of turnips, and usually the ones that are used are 2,4-D, MCPAs, Aapresid. These are the main ones. And the same applies to amaranthus. We have 11 modes of action in Argentina. So Why are we abusing the use of some products? Because with regard to the ratio price efficacy, they are the best ones and the cheaper ones, but they do not last for long. So we need to see the way in which we can add the more expensive products or add the ones that have 60% of effectiveness when it comes to control and which we didn't use in the past. So we need to see how we can add those other MOAs through selective application, etc. So let us move to a guide for making a resistant weed. That is to say, what can we do to make a weed progress more quickly? Usually, these are things that happen in fields. No crop rotation. Monoculture is the worst thing, or it's a very good thing for the weed. And also, biculture is not good either. For example, we could use second season soybean and sunflower. So we can see that, well, that will not be enough. So we should be able to add pastures, right? Because that would be ideal. And same applies to agronomic management, like, for example, seeding date, density, all of that. Well, we should do that. Poor monitoring. The poorer the monitoring, the better the situation for the weed. So we need to know what we have in the plots, because if we do not recognize it, we will do things poorly and we will favor resistant. Different modes of action need to be used. Also, label dose for large weeds. The label dose does not apply to large weeds. We do not use the same dose if a weed is very large. These are not the label doses. Also, controlling large weeds without a double hit policy. When you have a large weed, it's not enough with just a one-hit approach. That is to say, we have to use a double hit approach, like, for example, manual weeding as a complement, or using a seed destroyer, but we need to find a way to kill the large weeds.
Use of the same product with the residual weeds that enter through roots, by the roots. The amount of product should be less than the one we need. It's very much studied that in different conditions, the product that gets to the target is less than we expected. So here we have to focus on the quality of application, technology, technique, and environmental conditions. We always talk about conveyors, but we should not clean machinery. We have if we do not clean machinery, that is going to make weeds more resistant. And if you repeat the same technique without combining this with others, it will become resistant. There are resistance of varied. I'm going to take a bit more time because I started late. And many things that are easy to perform now, but they are going to be uncomfortable tomorrow, because we are going to pay off this comfort in the future. We have been perhaps we spend 10 years doing the same field, and we do not do what's right, because thinking we're going to move to another field. These are the different weeds that are resistant in different areas, and these are the herbicide that we are exposing weeds because of overuse. Raygrass exposed to glyphosate in the case of cruciferous and grasses, ALS, cruciferous that are glypho-hormonal resistant, because these are the herbicides that we have been using. And the other hard grasses that are not resistant, but they are growing pretty fast. To wrap up, all tools are necessary, but not enough. We use selective tools. They are very good tools to delay the appearance of certain weeds, but none of them is enough. We need them all. And the silver bullet we always look for, we are always looking for the new glyphosate, or when glyphosate started stopped being useful, we started waiting for a new chemical silver bullet. And the truth is that the silver bullet will never be in the tank of the sprayer, but in the head of the farmer, the advisor's head, and the network that we make up, because we need to start varying the techniques to destroy the evolution and the adaptation of weeds. Thank you so much. Before I pass on to the summary, to wrap up, I would like to show you, there was one last slide in the presentation after Esteban's presentation. There it is. To wrap up from Corteva, I wanted to show you the conceptual model from the point of view of the team of the chemistry team. And you have to choose the right herbicide dose and the list of things we do every day to generate a resistant weed. And from the advisory team and with all, we are working jointly to try to deaccelerate the process. In this slide, this is a conceptual model of Mackenzie that is pretty interesting because we choose the dose of a herbicide. This is the high dose strategy. And this is a biological curve, a Gauss bell. And here you can see that if we use a very low dose, we will be killing a very low percentage. This is the dose where we kill 50% of weeds. And if we go to the right dose, this is the chosen dose where we eliminate the whole population, because this combination and genetic recombination, there are many species that will be escaping the dose. So the use dose is the one that states high herbicide dose. We are sure we are going to be controlling 100% of the weed population. Here there can be a constant genetic recombination, and we will not see the resistance to this. There might be a resistance if there's a natural mutation. So there we can see a species that can tolerate that herbicide due to a mutation, and we know the story forward. If we focused on this possibility of lowering the dose because we rely on the herbicide, and we will be working here, and we will be leaving this end of this survival of these species that will be selected, because this will have a genetic combination with all of the ones that are here with open pollination, and here we will be rapidly giving the possibility for this recombination with tolerant species to these high doses. We would be favoring the recombination and mutation and resistance of species. That's why we work on this a lot. We say, well, let's work with the right doses. Let's combine action modes. Let's not work with a single one. I think the three of speakers have focused on these combinations. We are all working on combinations and multiple resistance. That's why I wanted to leave you with this conceptual model, and we are all focused on working with different action modes with the correct dose. Let me add something to this, because I think this figure is wonderful. This slide is wonderful. And connecting this to something I mentioned, what's something that's key, we have to understand that when we are applying these doses, we are applying subdoses, because the size of the weed matters. So timing, correct dose use, and correct molecule.